the nervous system burnout from years and years of incredibly heavy lifts. And some people can tolerate it more than others. Like some people run one marathon and their hips and back are
Yeah, you
shot,
said this
where
before.
some
Yeah,
can run 10 to 15 and be fine. So it's like a
yeah.
durability thing that's kind of innate. Welcome back to the Iron Road podcast. Ian here with my buddy Eric, the man, the myth, the legend. Honestly, I have to be honest here, the true talent of the podcast, the broadcasting talent all comes from Eric. I am the minnow that kind of tracks the shark here. I'm
No,
just
no, no,
going
no.
to ride his
I have to,
coattails.
I have to cut you off. I have to cut you off. A lot of people don't understand this. I'm going to be very serious for a second here because I'm in a serious
Ah,
mood.
you just ruined it.
Okay. No, no, but hear me out. It took me way too long to figure this out. Okay. That for every guy that is on the football field or on the stage, there are people that if they don't do their job, this guy's a homeless person.
True.
Literally like a homeless person or someone you never heard of. Like I have good ability to get on here and speak and act like a psycho. I am I have horrible organizational ability. I'm always running late. I'm wildly inconsistent. Okay. If there isn't someone like Ian in my life, I'm fucked. I'm totally fucked. Okay. Like it,
Good
and
team, man. Good team.
you look at people sometimes, and if you don't understand what makes businesses work or teams work or organizations work, you could look at certain things and be like, how is that possible? I don't understand how that makes sense. The reality is, if you think that being talented in terms of going on air and speaking is rare, being consistent, showing up on time and honoring your word is actually even more rare. Okay.
Amen.
I despise Jimmy Kimmel, despise him. Okay. But
It's easy.
exactly. But I remember Adam Carolla, who I do like a lot better,
Yeah.
one time was asked, is Jimmy Kimmel the funniest person you've ever known? And he said, I have worked construction with hundreds of guys who were 10 times funnier than Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
But he was like, Jimmy Kimmel was the most consistent guy I ever knew. Right. So there are a lot of guys that could captivate an audience, a small audience, but to put the work in, it's very challenging.
True.
And you need someone like Ian who matches your weaknesses, gets you wherever you need to. It's just impossible. I know it almost sounds condescending, but what I'm actually saying is, in a way, people like Ian are actually more important for the world than people like me. So a lot of guys that can run their mouth. There aren't a lot of guys that could put the work in and day out and do the unglamorous work that it takes to be successful. And so he could say I'm riding his coattails, but I actually view it as the exact opposite. And that's just the truth. Now,
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah,
I do believe that the adage, the cliche of "I'm a self-made man or woman or whoever." No one's self-made. You have everybody who's achieved anything has done it with a team,
dude,
whether they want to admit it or not, with
there's
support from their
this.
friends, with support from other staff members, whoever. Nobody has gotten anywhere worthwhile alone.
I love America. I love this country. I love being an American. But there's this thing in America, this hyper individualistic nature to, especially right wingers, that is delusional and out of touch with reality.
Yeah,
We have this idea like I'm an island and I'm like you said, I'm a self-made man. Dude,
no, you're not.
we could use athletes as an example. You know, if trying to think of a if Lawrence Taylor gets coached by anyone other than Bill Parcells, he might just be in prison. He wouldn't have listened to Bill Parcells. He wouldn't have listened to Bill Belichick. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe any other coach wouldn't have known how to deal with this talent. At the time that Lawrence Taylor was playing, I'll give you this kind of flip side thing. There was another guy playing in New York named Mark Gastineau who was putting up similar stats to Lawrence Taylor. He was a freakishly talented, jacked up white guy, incredible athlete. Okay, and I've always said that if Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick got a hold of Mark Gastineau, he's probably in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Okay, but they didn't. They got a hold of Lawrence Taylor, who
Yeah.
I think Lawrence Taylor was the better athlete, but the point is, Mark Gastineau is not in the Hall of Fame, and he had multiple 20-sack seasons. So it's no one is even if you're like really talented and someone notices you and brings you to the right room to talk to the right people about furthering your talent. Congratulations, you're not self-made. Okay.
Yeah.
If you
Agreed.
study military history, everybody wants to be the fighter pilot. Do you have any idea how much work goes into maintaining a fighter jet? There are certain jets where for every hour you fly, there's literally over 45 to 100 maintenance hours for 1 hour of flight.
Wow. I
That's
didn't know
that's
that. That's
the rock
outrageous.
star, and then there's literally a team of people whose whole existence is to put this fucking thing back together after you flew it for 2 hours. There's the guy
Yeah.
that shoots you off the aircraft carrier. There's the guy that tells you how to come in and land. The people that get you into the place. It's dude. It's no one is self-made. That's a great point, Ian. It's you can't say it. Some people are more motivated than others. Some
Sure.
people might have had less infrastructure in place around them to make them great, but in America, every society has its own morals. Kind of like there have always been different moralities throughout history. Now, I'm a Christian, so I would say I don't necessarily agree with all those moralities, but even within a Christian ethos, there are more collective Christian societies and there are more individualistic ones. America is an individualistic Christian, if not now secular society. So people use morality to rationalize what they've done and and they will discuss their accomplishments within that morality to have higher status within a country. It's not terribly popular, or at least it hasn't been, to be like, I did absolutely nothing. My team did it for me. No one says that, right?
Yeah.
Instead, it's the opposite.
Humility is gone.
I did it all. I'm the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like that's just drives me crazy. Like I hesitate to say this, but a guy that comes to mind here, one of my favorite grapplers to watch of all time, Gordon Ryan, the guy that every move that he's done could work for my body type. I've studied his game immensely, but he's very into the I'm self-made. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, dude, if you weren't born in North Jersey, okay, you would never have been near this jujitsu epicenter
Sure.
of society. Okay. He sets foot in Gary Tonon's gym. Gary Tonon is a understudy of John Danaher, and Gary Tonon teaches Gordon some really good stuff and says, you know what, go to John. And then he's smart enough, to Gordon's credit, to be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to listen to Danaher. I'm going all the way. If you move to Iowa, how does that look?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? If Michael Jordan was born 100 years ago, okay, like he just would have been a local folk hero.
Yeah.
You,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
you
Absolutely.
know what I mean? It's you have to be
Yeah.
in the right place at the right time, where society also takes is taken in by your skills. 150 plus years ago, people didn't really care about sports the way they do now. It
It's
was all
true.
right. It was like, all right, go to work.
Yeah.
What I mean?
And then
Have
go play
kids, go to
sport
work.
and then
Get
yeah, and then
yes,
go play pro baseball,
yes,
after work.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
and
if you're a
I
great
will
athlete
say
now, keep going.
yeah, I will say that people, who do become great, they're not self-made, but the things they do when no one's watching really matter. Like you said at the opening of the show, consistency and showing up and getting the work done when nobody else wants to and outworking your opponents, in private. Like champions are made and champions train hardest when no one's watching. That's the old like cliche as well.
Hmm.
But I do believe that. No one's self-made, but without pushing yourself in a way that nobody else will, you may not achieve your potential, even with the best team in
Exactly,
the world. Some people
exactly.
could be surrounded by the best of the best and never truly achieve their potential because they're not willing to put in the work. So there's two sides to it, but people who say they're self-made they have no humility and they're just not willing to give some of the credit to their team and the support of people and systems in their lives. And then there's people who have all the gifts and have the best genetics and have all the great things working for them that you can't improve upon or change and still don't achieve their best potential. So the moral
What
of the
you just
story
said,
is you kind of need both.
what you just said, uh, is like the big difference in terms of public perception and probably also outcome. In terms of how like the public perceives Michael Jordan versus LeBron James.
Hmm.
Michael Jordan's a fascinating guy because, let's just be totally honest, like it's being fatherless is fairly common in the African American community. It
Sure.
is what it is. Michael Jordan comes from an intact family, very close relationship with his mother and father. Father's a positive role model. He has multiple brothers. He's raised. He has all the values put in place to at least get him to his level of his success. Plus, most of his brothers are 6 feet or less. He happens to turn out to be 6'6". Hugely
Okay.
important if you want to be a great basketball player.
Yeah.
But Michael Jordan played for University of North Carolina. This is back when you couldn't just play 1 year and leave. I think you could only leave like following your junior year. So junior or
Wow.
senior year. So you have to play at least 3 years. Um, he played for, I think it was Dean Smith, who was like a legendary coach. I mean, there's multiple guys that played on that team that later went to the NBA. James Worthy, who was in the Hall of Fame, played with Michael Jordan on the UNC, later went to the Lakers. Um, and Sam Perkins, another guy that wasn't a Hall of Fame, but was a great player, had a very long career, played on the same team. All of them taught the fundamentals of basketball, how to play as a team with Dean Smith. Michael Jordan goes to the NBA. Okay. He winds up being the only star on the Bulls, turns them around, but he just can't get them to championship level until they bring in Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson says, listen, in order for us to win the championship, you're going to have to score, you're going to have to average 30 points or less per game, not more, because we have to get the other guys involved. And what did
Hmm.
Jordan do? He did it. Phil
Yeah.
Jackson, also one of the greatest coaches, okay, and he goes to 6 NBA finals, wins 6 times, whereas LeBron James frequently espouses I'm self-made, goes to teams, doesn't listen to the coaches, brings in whoever he wants to play with, does not submit to authority, does not submit to anyone who could potentially know more than him, which of course leads to a toxic culture. If the best player on the team says fuck you, I'm not listening, you're going to lose the whole team.
Of
if
course.
if you're playing for the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan says, "Yes, coach," you better do it too, because you're not better than Michael Jordan. You don't make as
Yeah.
much money. You're not as
Yeah.
valuable to the organization. Shut the fuck up and run the sprints, okay? Or take
Yeah.
or shoot the shot. No one cares, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
So point is, that's a big part of the reason why people don't like LeBron. He's an incredible athlete. He's a great physical specimen, but that mentality is just so different. Even Jordan publicly has never been like, I'm the man. He's always said, well, Magic Johnson's right there with me. Larry Bird's right there with me. Oh, you forgot
Humility.
about Bill Russell or these older, Bob Cousy, these older players. Like, he's always just, maybe he doesn't believe that. Who knows? Okay. But he understands perception. He understands this is leadership. This is the way that it works. And like you said, there's no such thing as self made. It's what you do when no one else is looking that matters. And it's almost more the consistency of it than like the intensity of it that even matters sometimes. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
doing the right
But
thing just enough, not overkill, is very important.
I would think that humility as a characteristic for someone is one of the best and, let's say attractive, meaning people would respect you, attractive in that sense, people respect you and understand and kind of appreciate your work ethic more. But there are a lot of people who are like drawn to cockiness and brashness, like Andrew Tate or there's a couple of influencers who are super, super cocky and they have massive followings, and I don't really understand it because I can't watch it for, like, more than 10 seconds because it just is such a off-putting way to be, even though it's probably a persona that they put on for the camera to drum up controversy and clickbait and all this.
Yeah.
I just feel like, wouldn't it be nice if more people were humble and gave credit to others even though they were the best, clearly the best in their, respective field? It's just, it's sad. It's sad because I feel like humility is kind of a foundational pillar of our culture, a true American culture. And even though throughout history and depicted in movies, we've been, the Americans are obnoxious, the Americans are cocky, the Americans are, come in loud and don't really care about other cultures. I think it's quite the opposite, throughout history. But humility is it's something that I always try to hold dear and maintain throughout my life, in my personal life, and throughout my relationships with my friends and family. It's important because you can't take yourself too seriously because nothing goes well when you act like a big shot constantly and then you fall on your face. Now people have more of a reason to hate on you and more of a reason to pick on you because you've kept this air about you that you're better than everyone else. So nothing worse than a
Yes.
know-it-all or a cocky bastard, in my opinion.
Well, it's also, I mean, the topic of the reason why I think Americans or people all in the world are so drawn to people like Andrew Tate is just like we're kind of like a rudderless society from a moral perspective. There's unfortunately, you can argue why this is taking place. Part of it, I think, is actually socially engineered. Part of it is just kind of like uh, very kind of like dysgenic effects of breeding in America in the sense of like we don't because we don't prioritize or give masculine men status, you see a lot of guys that are not masculine and are not leaders getting status, therefore getting women and then reproducing more men who are just like them, who are pathetic. And guys out there who want to be led wind up going for anyone who is the strong horse, even if the strong horse isn't a good horse. Like I think
Yeah.
that was actually probably the wrong person to quote, but Osama bin Laden, I believe, actually said that when people are presented with the strong horse and the weak horse, they will always go with the strong horse. Now, yes, in this case, we could have the strong horse that is just and virtuous versus the one that is degenerate and is not. But the only way you get someone to follow you is you have to be the strong horse. And so if you project strength, even if it's fake, it's so easy now in social media. I mean, you and I
Yeah.
get this from just doing this a little bit. Like, dude, even this is even true of me, obviously. Anytime you look at an influencer, you see what they want you to see. This is not a
Of
day
course.
in, day out. This is how my life is. I'm always in charge. I always look great. But your brain still doesn't really recognize that unconsciously. You still see this and you're like, wow, that guy's the man, or that girl is so hot, or they always look like this. And so we just kind of get wrapped up and then and we follow it. And when it comes to commentary, like I consider myself to be a pretty well-read person, at least compared to other people our age, certainly in our field. And it's amazing to me how guys that have very little knowledge, could even be about training, but it could be about politics, military strategy. They develop these crazy followings just by confidently espousing nonsense. And
Yeah.
it's just because we're so attracted to that. And I think part of it's also because we're so used to being led by people who are not that. Like, when was the last time? Part of the reason why Trump was so successful was just because he was kind of masculine. Most of the people that were used to leading this country were effete men, at least in our lifetime, who
Yeah.
don't take a stand on something. Like, people were probably attracted to Trump simply because he took a stand on certain things, even if they didn't agree what the things were.
Fair
Because
enough.
it's
Yeah.
so it's you look at like The Rock. How many times does The Rock say something and then people get mad at him and he immediately apologizes? It's like,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
dude, you're The Rock. What are you talking
And you're
about,
supposed to
dude?
be the most
Just
masculine
yeah,
guy around.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so that's just so common in our society that people apologize for believing something, or they try to take the most diplomatic thing. And you know how it is, dude. If you try to train for strength and endurance simultaneously, you just get a whole lot of nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
At sometimes you have to commit. You have to commit to something to really to be great at something. And yeah, that's why the Andrew Tates of the world get these big followings. And also because they're willing to address controversial questions in a confident way, even if sometimes their solutions aren't the best. People are tired of hearing bullshit milquetoast solutions about
That's fair.
societal problems that they've heard a million times over and clearly know is bringing the West into hell.
Yeah.
you know, you
Well,
know, you know what I mean. So
yeah.
that's another thing. Like, oh, he's not saying it. It's just yeah, it's frustrating, man. But I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you about training a little bit since this is the whole point of the podcast.
I like these little offshoots though, these little
Listen, dude,
digressions.
I'm considering starting something where it's just me ranting about that stuff because I don't know if you want your brand associated with my somewhat controversial opinions, but we'll talk about that off camera.
All right, fair enough.
But to be fair, that's what I like talking about the most. Though is I like talking about everything. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. You're very well
um.
versed.
So I am now taking a deload. My training partner went to Portugal for spring break, right?
Okay.
So he left yesterday. He'll be gone for about 10, 11 days. Dude, I think the last 12 to 14 weeks of training have taken my soul. I've gotten stronger.
Really?
I've gotten stronger, no question. The weights I'm lifting getting way, way higher. But dude, I have seen my resting heart rate over the past 3 weeks go up 10 beats per minute.
Damn.
I think my nervous system is like, no, Eric, no.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take 11 days of either really light work or no work. I'll still do jujitsu. I'll do my cardio. Uh, but I think when I get back, I wanted your opinion on this. 'Cause I've been big on the intensity stuff, and I'm gonna keep it in there. I'm gonna start doing like an 8 weeks hard, 2 weeks easy type thing. So 8 weeks super intense, 2 weeks pump, 8 weeks
That's
as
fair.
opposed to 12 or 14 weeks of just demented madness. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also think I'm
Fun
going to
though.
bring all of the stuff down to one hard set and then increase the volume over the course of that 8-week block and then cut it back down at the start of the next block. Because I could feel like it's starting to take a toll on my nervous system. Like the other day, hit a great PR, close stance, belt squats, hit 585, whatever it is. That I always say the sled just weighs 45. It was 6 plates
Sure, sure.
aside
Easy math.
for 8. And then I was like, you know what? I'll hang in there. I'll take it for another set. I got 3 and had to have the implement pulled off me,
Got it.
which has not happened to me in a
Well,
long time.
yeah.
And I think as you get stronger, it does take more out of you. Is my point.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Your nervous
yeah,
system gets taxed, but by design with
yeah.
more weight that you as you graduate through the ranks. But you also said that you're very prone to nervous system fatigue. So maybe
Precisely.
you as an individual have kind of a genetic predisposition or just a training history. You remember our friend, I'm not going to say his full name, but Chris, who's a power lifter. He was a generation before us, stocky guy, blonde hair. He was, very, very strong guy, especially in his peak. But he would kind of come through our strength gym every once in a while. He'd coach a little
Hmm.
bit. He would kind of share his wisdom, and then he would get under the barbell for bench press or for whatever. I recall for bench press, and there could be many factors that contribute to this, but under the bench press, he would take like 135 off the bar, 225, no matter what the weight was, but he'd be trembling, and
Yes.
it's flying. But I think his nervous system, maybe for multiple reasons, many reasons, but was so shot from so many years of, he was an equipped power lifter. So he was squatting probably 700 pounds weekly for a long, long time,
Hmm.
right? Or more. He was bench pressing, 400 to 600 pounds, maybe in the shirt, who knows? So potentially, like you, he was very sensitive to nervous system overload and then got this residual ongoing effect because he wasn't consistently lifting when he came into our gym. He could always throw up 405 on the bench press, which was outrageous.
Yeah.
But every warm-up set would still be shaky looking, like, trembling. Not shaky like it's unstable. Just his body would be shaking even
Hmm.
though the bar path was smooth, which I found that to
Yes.
be very interesting. He was a great guy. He taught me a lot. I always noticed that, and I always attributed it to the nervous system burnout from years and years of incredibly heavy lifts. And some people can tolerate it more than others. Like some people run one marathon and their hips and back are
Yeah. You
shot,
said this
where
before.
some
Yeah.
can run 10 to 15 and be fine. So it's like a
Yeah.
durability thing that's kind of innate. And yeah, you have to listen to your body. I think the 8 on, 2 off, or 8 heavy, 2 pump is going to be a good split for you over the long haul to stay in the game and be
Yeah.
able to
It's tough,
appreciate your
dude.
recovery and,
I I noticed the past couple weeks, and it was funny because things happen. Life is funny. Like I I literally had heard a clip of Justin Harris talking about this like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Then I felt like it started to happen to me, and I was like, "Oh, it's interesting." He was talking about nervous system fatigue and, like, in particular, like difficulty sleeping from very challenging workouts, and how like
interesting.
sometimes if you're in bed at night and your body temperature's fluctuating like crazy, you find yourself like waking up a little bit more than usual. It's if you pay attention, it's usually around a very challenging workout.
Hmm.
And it's like your nervous system is trying to recover. You just kind of buried your body. And I do notice, man, that Wednesday leg workout, there are so many times the next day I wake up to train jujitsu and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like
Yeah.
I was cooked, dude. I kept the volume about the same, like 2 sets. But when I first started getting back into really training hard again, Ian, I was belt squatting 315.
Yeah.
I've doubled the
Yeah.
output.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
how long?
In 2, 3 months.
So it's not enough time for your nervous system to really level up itself, to
Exactly.
adjust
Exactly.
as fast as your muscles are.
Exactly. And so I immediately was just like, oh wow, like this is like next level. Like I started to just wake up in the middle of the night. Again, temperature fluctuating like crazy. I'm waking up sweating. Nope, now I'm cold. And I've got a little girl who's in school, so she certainly brings home a lot of bugs, and that's normal as well. But
Sure.
for sure, I noticed that I feel consistently the worst the day after that Wednesday leg workout. It's just I wake up the next day and I'm like, I don't even want to fucking move. Like I'm just
Yeah.
obliterated. And I'm
Yeah.
never really that sore. Like we discussed last week. It's
Yeah.
just my nervous system is just like, Eric,
Uh,
what did you do? Like, what the fuck did you do? You know what I
would
mean?
you prefer the soreness? Like, if you had an option to choose your genetics and choose your
Great question.
responses, would you rather have intense delayed onset muscle soreness for days and days, possibly a week, or would you rather have this nervous system shutdown?
If I wasn't training jujitsu, I would take the soreness. Okay.
Fair.
It's just the movement restriction that comes with the soreness
Yeah.
at this point scares me about more serious injuries, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, you take what you can get. I mean, I've been back on the mat. I just love it. I can't deny it. Like I've finally tried to figure out how to balance both and a little bit better. But I just love the strategy of jujitsu, like the competitiveness. Like I'm never going to get. Listen, dude, I'm going to be a black belt in this. This is obviously a huge part of who I am. Like it's not just like I
Sure.
I just started at age 40. Like this is a big part of my identity and who
Yes.
I am. But you have to obviously pick ways to, and I still want to be athletic. I don't want to be just a big guy. Like I still want to be someone who can actually fuck you up as opposed to someone who only looks like they could fuck you up.
Yes.
But to your point, yeah, I think I would probably prefer to be sore if I didn't have to deal with coming in and doing jujitsu. And with jujitsu, it's interesting, Ian, you could find a lot of ways to get better. And I actually think that most guys, most casual guys, probably train too hard. Like i- for me, because I teach 2 days a week, my brain is always in the game. I'm always practicing. I'm always helping people. And even I just got injured, obviously, a couple months ago, took some time off. I didn't really feel like I lost anything technique wise as I was still coaching. I was still
Okay.
paying attention. Point is, like, you could really improve at jujitsu by going a little bit lighter, drilling, putting yourself in situational training, and actually push the conditioning and strength stuff a little bit harder, as opposed to coming in and sparring as hard as possible every single day. A lot of guys do
Yes.
that and they do not improve because they're just not learning the sport. They're just flailing around everywhere. And like, sure, they're not getting submitted as much because they're flailing around, but they're not actually improving. Like
Yeah.
they're just getting themselves tired. And then when they get tired, the guy with experience is going to beat you to death. Happens all the time.
That's been my biggest deterrent for starting jujitsu. I'm very interested in it. I kickbox and boxed for many years, so I like the combat sports. I just felt like with boxing and kickboxing, sparring every single week, if I was getting hit in the head and not going to take this to the next level and compete or go pro, like why am I getting hit in the head constantly? I
Exactly.
just didn't, so I
Exactly.
like, I'll still hit the pads or hit the heavy bag just for that skill. But with jujitsu, I met a guy in my community who's he's a Brazilian guy. He's a 20-year jujitsu veteran. And he's like, hey, come to my gym one day, try it out. I told him the same thing. I said, my hesitation is I don't know how to do this. I'm going to go in there with other guys who don't know how to do this, but who are really overzealous and overconfident and trying to prove something. And I'm going to get my arm twisted and then I can't train and I can't fulfill my actual true passion and hobby, which is the exercise, the light weightlifting,
Yeah.
all that. So as much as I want to get into it, my thing was if I'm going to do this, I want to get into it and learn. I mean, in a spoiled kind of way, I want to only train with veterans. I only want to train with people who are really good and who know how to not hurt me, first of all, and then tell me, hey, dude, you're fucking this up. You're going to hurt yourself
Yeah.
or you're going to hurt me. Don't do that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing with jiu-jitsu. So I'd rather have more guidance than be kind of fed to these amateurs who are just going to crank on you because they want to prove something or they want to be tough.
Or they're just
So
retarded.
too
Or they
many
just don't know
well,
what they're
yeah,
doing.
or
Yeah.
that. There's too many
Yeah.
egos and too much people get into this because they wanna be tough and they wanna, like you said, like, fuck you up or have that ability, but I'd rather learn the craft. I'd rather learn the actual techniques, and like you said, go lighter and learn better and then not get hurt through my journey as much. I know it's almost inevitable to not sustain an injury, but we're just
Oh, dude.
but
I,
I just,
I teach, dude, Ian. The not, and I'm pretty good as an instructor at like trying to keep a sane cap on the behavior of the class, when I'm coaching. But yeah, I mean, there's nut jobs in every white belt class. Some of them just don't know any better. Like, there's a guy that I train. He's got to be older than us. Short, chubby. He's a firefighter. I did not know that a person who looked like that could maintain a heart rate as high as he does for as long as he does, because he just goes into full panic mode every time he spars. Like,
Wow.
just crazy, like,
An adrenaline
everything
dump.
he's doing, he's just squeezing as hard as possible, and
Hate
I
that.
get physically, I get angry at him because I'm like, you're not going to get better until you dump this fight or flight bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you will not get better. Like, it's you have to calm the fuck down and like actually learn how to move and figure out what to do. And like it elicits like a response. And there have been times where like I don't always train with the class, but if I do, I always pick guys like that to train with first to get them more tired so they're less of a
Mm.
threat to the rest of the class.
Wow, that's nice
I'm
of you.
like I'm like, "Here's what we're gonna do. Like, I'm just gonna exhaust you so that you're a little bit less explosive when you're flaily, later on in this, and you don't wind up injuring some guy who's actually trying to learn."
I
But
take that
it's
strategy
very
with my
hard.
son and my wife. So I tire my son out, during I wrestle the hell out of him so he can't abuse my wife later on in the day.
There's
He's
some
3
truth
years
to
old, by
that.
the way, so yeah.
There's some truth to that. It's,
Yeah,
I was
toddlers,
told
man.
this when I had it when I got my dog, my current dog, my Connie Corso. "A tired dog is a happy dog." It's also true of a child in many respects.
Yeah,
Especially a boy. A tired boy generally is a happy one, if you're able to just
or more well-behaved, at
yes,
least.
precisely,
Yeah,
precisely.
yeah,
But to your
absolutely.
point, I have to I'm gonna experiment with, like, 1 set per movement. Uh, I've been doing strategies to, like, keep the training weight down. So, like, if I'm gonna do a belt squat, I'll do some rest pause, hamstring work first to pre-exhaust the hammy. So
Sure.
the load's a little bit less. So when I'm squatting, I'm using more quad, and there's just less. But the prime movers are a little more fatigued, or at least some of them are.
Yeah,
Um, but still, dude, it's pretty crushing, you know.
yeah.
And when I look back at my training when I was with us, at our old 7 p.m. crew, I definitely wasn't doing as many sets to failure back then.
Well, it's
In terms
powerlifting,
of the
so you were
assistance
rarely going
work.
to
Yeah,
failure.
yeah, and the assistance work, not really.
Oh,
You
true,
know
true,
what?
true. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I mean.
Alright,
But
that's fair.
for
Yeah,
sure, heavy sets of 5 with a safety squat bar on your back when it's 5
brutal.
plates or whatever. Yeah, it cooks you, dude. Cooks
Terrible,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, though, just so you can clarify for me and the audience. When you say 1 heavy set, do you mean, warm up for a couple of sets, take a heavy set, and then take some back down sets, or your final set is your top set? Like, only 1 set to failure per exercise or per day? Like,
Well, I've been
how are you
doing
gonna strategize this?
2 primary methods here. Okay. For the more demanding stuff, like again, exercises in particular, okay,
Yeah,
unless it's a leg extension. So any squat or leg press, I'm talking about working up to like a heavy set, no reps in reserve.
okay.
Maybe one RIR, but at this point I'm pretty good at knowing I don't have another one and just rack it. I'm not like trying to. I'll start that weight for 6 and try to push it up to 8 to 10 and then add some more weight and then move up.
Okay.
Okay. For some of the easier stuff to recover from, I've been doing like rest pause. So for example, like leg extensions, I'll pick a weight that I'll do 3 rest pause sets. So I'll do basically 1 set with 1 rep in reserve. I usually don't go to failure on the first one. Okay.
Okay.
Rest 30 seconds. Second set to 1 rep in reserve. Okay. Third set, 0 rep in reserve. With the
Mm,
total amount of repetitions should be between 25 and 30 on a leg extension.
okay.
When I get to 30, I'll throw some weight on and start back from the beginning again. In the past, I've noticed, and I do that with like leg curls, not with glute hams because they're just more demanding. That just
Terrible.
seems
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Seems totally crazy. But gives me some volume while it saves me some time. But I also don't go to failure on those first 2 pushes because I've noticed that when I do, the total number of reps that I can get just comes down. And
By a long shot.
it's like it's
Yeah,
very, very challenging. Like,
yeah.
certain lat exercises, like vertical pulls, particularly if they're like the DC chins or like lat pull downs, I'll oftentimes rest pause those.
Okay.
Okay. If I'm doing pull-ups, I will not rest pause them. I'll do like 2 heavy sets, 1 or 2 heavy sets.
Hmm,
Any row, I don't like to rest pause. I like to do a heavy set of 6 to 8, and then maybe a back down set of 12 to 15.
okay.
Okay. If you're big into DC training, Dante really talks a lot about rest pausing pecs. I have only done that with like chest machines and really just the pec deck, my brain likes to press heavy. So I don't
Okay.
like the fatigue being. I want to put some plates on and move some actual weight. But if I do pec deck, I will rest pause it in a similar fashion, getting 25, 30 total reps, and I actually love doing that. It gives me like a great pump.
Yeah.
Like I get a good. Just it's that pec deck. You just get such a good controlled stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
you know
nice.
what I mean? It's not as chaotic as, like, heavy dumbbell flies, which, as I get older, scare me a little bit. They get a little fucking dicey, dude, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been
But
going super light with those lately and
you
just
have to. You have
hanging
to.
out into the deep stretch, not coming
Yes.
too far up, just kinda, really prioritizing the bottom half of that. But yeah, good pec deck, tough to beat a good pec deck, especially the one that can lock back a little bit, to the, you have to go grab one handle, grab the other,
Yeah.
and kind of, it keeps you in great position. It more stable than a cable pec fly, for example. So it's nice. You
Yes.
can just sometimes with machines, people used to shit on machines. I used to shit on machines when I was like a barbell freak
We
power
all did.
lifter.
We all
It
did.
was like, you're a pussy you're using machines. How about they spare your joints? How about they probably can develop arguably more muscle because you can stay in the game and do more work under that implement instead of a barbell, which takes a toll on your joints, toll on your stabilizers, your ligaments and tendons, much more so than machines will. There's something to be said for the track that you stay on, and
I was
and
just gonna
all you
say
have to
that.
do is push in 2 directions or push and resist versus controlling where it goes plus lifting the weight. It's a much, more severe demand. So I'll usually start my movements with barbells or dumbbells and my sessions rather, and then I'll taper down and just do tons of machine work after the fact, just to kinda, like, keep accumulating volume. But, yeah, man, I like that strategy. It's pretty cool. I train so much differently. It's so funny how we have such different approaches to our training. But, yeah, I've been just doing tons and tons of volume lately, and my physique is just my diet's
Well, dude,
flawless. So I will say that. I love it.
volume is so much better to do on machines, though,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
just dude, when you have, like, a lot of muscle fatigue, the likelihood of injury goes way up on barbell or dumbbell exercises. You know, if you're
Yeah.
doing sets of 15 with flat dumbbell bench, like I don't like that. I don't like getting in a position with that. I would rather do it on a pec deck or on a chest press because I can sit there and just focus on the push, okay, instead of like trying to stabilize this thing while I'm laying there. I just don't like it. And the other thing too, like I used to feel this. This is, I guess, when I was younger, always trying to figure out like what does nervous system fatigue feel like, and it can feel like a lot of different things, but I think one big thing is when you look at your workout and you're like, I don't know how I could possibly get through this. So like as an
Lack of
example,
interest.
yeah, like as an example,
That's how I
always
define it.
stuck out to me when I would deadlift uh on, like, like a heavy deadlift day, on paper, I would be like, wow, like, okay, I got to do some quad work. So, and keep in mind, the gym that we trained at, we had no machines. So
Of
for me,
course. Of course.
afterwards, I'm like, after some quad work, all right, so I got to either do safety squat bar stuff or I got to do like lunges. Then I can do some hamstring. Okay, I'll do some glute hams. I'll do some abs. And then, I got to train my back. And like when you after I would deadlift, I'd be like, I don't even want to take that dumbbell off the rack to row. I'm
Yeah.
shot. Like that's
Yeah.
when the machine makes a huge difference. Just put the pin down and pull. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the idea
Yeah.
that I would do heavy sets
Yeah.
of 5 on the deadlift at that time, and again, there are guys that do this. Okay. Now maybe they can do it because they're younger. Maybe they're gonna burn themselves out. I've seen guys do this, they still do it. But like the idea that I was gonna put a safety squat bar on my back and do enough volume or intensity to make my quads grow after I just took a heavy set of 3 or 5 on a rack pull or a deadlift
It's just
is just
silly.
crazy. It's just
Yeah.
silly, dude. It's way too much.
Yeah.
And today, I remember seeing Dave Tate talk about this. There definitely is a propensity, like squat, bench, deadlift programs are really common, or like really, really common and popular right now. Like,
Okay.
those are the movements that you do 3 days a week or whatever. But A, I think as you get stronger, they're problematic. And B, I think Colton trains that way. And he recently, like, by his standards, underperformed in a meet pretty substantially because he said he went way too heavy in training with the squat
Mm.
bench deadlift variations.
Classic
Right.
mistake. Yeah.
It's really hard to recover from those movements when the reality is the assistance work is there to build and maintain muscle. Okay.
Yes.
And you should pick the least demanding thing to be able to do that. Especially if you again, if we prioritize training like you did, which is like we start with the heavy, challenging shit, right?
Yep.
If you're trying to get your bench up and you hit your bench number for the day, like everything after that is just maintaining the muscle. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be, like wide grip benches, 6 to 8 rep max. Like, no, you just did your heavy
Oof,
bench.
God,
Just, yeah, yeah,
sounds
just
terrible.
chill out. Just chill. Yeah, exactly. Sounds like suicide, bro. Sounds like
Yeah,
legit
yeah.
suicide. Yeah.
But it's funny, it's also refreshing to hear even people like Colton, even though, dude, 24, he's 24 years old, which it's really hard to fathom that. But he is 24. He probably has a lot of training wisdom. He must have, or some great mentors, because I've known some freakazoids who, what was the kid's name on Long Island years and years ago? He was like an 800-pound squatter at like 18 years old.
Matt
You
Sumner.
remember this? Yeah, good memory. Uh, but he never really went to, I think he could have been world class. Maybe if he had like a customato of a coach or
Yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying, like a Phil
Yeah.
Jackson of a coach. He
Yeah.
needed to meet a mentor. And I think he was more of the lone wolf type. Like he trained by himself. He trained with training partners who just idolized him, maybe. I'm speculating. And he never had the guidance. I think that when you watch Colton lift, he's very gifted in many ways, but he must have had technique coaches at some point to
Yes.
get
Oh,
him
yeah,
so
dude.
dialed in. Dude never breaks technique. Like his technique never gets grindy or ugly ever. He just deadlifted 520 kilograms, which is I think over 1,100 pounds. Granted, it's a close sumo, whatever, but when you watch it, his head, like when I deadlift and I deadlift heavy, my head starts to move away from my torso and segments just start to separate and break up. And you can see the holes in my game. Even on those maximal, ultra heavy lifts, I mean, world class historic lifts, his technique never breaks down. There's something to be said for that. When you see somebody who is one of the best in the world at what they do, whether it's a track runner or a power lifter or a basketball player, when you see it in person or even on video these days, it's majestic. It's really
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
incredible to watch these people in their element doing what they're meant to do. But, I do feel like with Colton, it's nice to see that even he can screw it up sometimes. And I would say, okay, so the enhanced games, which is like the steroid Olympics coming up, is a half Thor is gonna attempt to break the world deadlift record again,
Mhm,
conventionally. And he's inviting Colton to come and lift against him
mhm.
conventional so they can go head to head. If Colton stays in the game for another 6 years, he's gonna smash half Thor's records, I think, if he just goes conventional. I don't know. He's not going like the Dan Green super wide sumo. Remember that his
Yes.
toes were like this far from the plates, where your
Yes.
stroke is so short and you
Yeah.
can leverage all your hip power and kind of like, game the system. Like when you see those bench pressers who are this wide and stubby arms and they go down three
Yeah.
inches. You know, shortening your stroke is important in powerlifting, but like he's not his sumo stance is pretty close to his body. It's pretty close to his hands.
Yeah.
So I think going conventional to him wouldn't be that far of a jump. I'm on a rant here, but I just feel like he's. I can't wait to watch the next 10 years of Colton's career because it's incredible. And
Someone put up a suggestion. It might have been Mark Bell. Uh, Colton versus Half Thor, where the winner is the best total between the sumo and conventional.
huh. So they do one of each,
Yeah.
and they do
That would be very
interesting.
interesting. That would be very interesting. Again, like, I still wanna see the conventional. I've never seen a video, but I haven't looked, by the way, of Colton pulling conventional. I mean, I haven't looked, so I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, I just don't think our audience, like, can really fathom, like, the type of stuff that we're talking about. Like, dude, it's really easy, you know maybe another bad analogy. I already mentioned Ben Laden, so let's just get even weirder. Joseph Stalin Joseph Stalin once said, or this quote is attributed to Joseph Stalin, uh, "1 death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic." All right? And when you
Yeah.
see these numbers of what Colton is lifting or anyone else, it just becomes a statistic to you. You actually don't understand how preposterous this is, what this guy's doing.
Yes.
Like, Mark Henry made a career out of being called the world's strongest man. Okay. And I
Yeah.
think to this day, you could make a case he is the most well-rounded strength athlete in American history.
Wow.
Olympics, for in Olympic lifting, world
Okay.
record holder power lifter, and a top level or very, very good strongman competitor. Most
Yeah.
people just do one of those, right?
Of course.
If they're lucky, right? For Colton, Mark Henry at his prime, he had to have been 365 pounds,
Yeah,
maybe heavier.
easy,
Okay.
probably heavier.
Colton is outlifting Mark Henry in powerlifting, and he weighs about 100 pounds less.
Yeah,
I don't think you could possibly fathom how insane this is. Like the numbers that like to for him to stand up with an 1,100 pound sumo deadlift at 265 at the end of a full meet in
that's even more impressive.
he's
Yeah,
already taken 9 attempts. Okay, two of 6 of which like directly tax the muscles that you're using to pull 1,100. Okay, your
yeah,
squats and obviously your deadlifts, and he just stands up with that weight and he makes it look easy. It's just his grip keeps failing him. Okay, like
yeah,
he
yeah.
has the horsepower in his hips and his back to stand up with that thing. There's no question. It's insane. And then you could look at his deadlift and you could be like, this is the greatest deadlift I've ever seen. And you probably would be right. And you could look at his squat and see him squatting 950 in like knee sleeves. You're like, this is insane. He benches like 610, dude.
Was
I mean, like this is like that's the type of
yeah,
shit that like Stan Efferding was like. I think Stan Efferding had like a low sixes bench press when he competed raw, and a lot of bodybuilders that go to bodybuilding into powerlifting tend to have good bench presses. They have so much musculature that they could put the technique together. They a lot of times will put up a good bench or a good deadlift. But Stan Efferding, years of bodybuilding training, infinitely more jacked, and he benches about the same as Colton.
crazy,
Like it's
crazy.
and it 265 is obviously a very big person, but guys, like I've been about
Not
that big.
really.
I've
Yeah,
been that big.
yeah,
It's not it's big if you're in a supermarket next to people that don't train, okay?
yeah.
But like trust me, if I put you in the same room as Half Thor and I was like, there's talk that Colton could outlift that guy, you would be like,
You'd laugh.
what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And to your point about like the technique being so clean and talking about our friend Chris, who was kind of very shaky. I do think that guys who are very explosive tend to have that problem. Like they're just
okay.
inherently unstable. You know, I think your assessment about nervous system fatigue also true, but I do think I remember Justin Harris telling me this. I was when he was coaching me, we would talk about lifting, and he was like, he said he was a very explosive lifter and he was oftentimes very shaky walking out
Mm,
like high repetition squats. And his concern was always that he would misgroove it and just die because it would come
yeah,
up. You produce all this force and then it just flies everywhere.
yeah,
So you look at like Larry Wheels lift. A lot of times there is a shakiness to it, especially when he's squatting. It's kind of like all
sure.
over the place. Colton is just like a crane.
He is.
It just goes up. It doesn't
There's
make
no
any
sticking
sense.
point. Like,
Yeah,
there's
dude.
no slowing down. It's one steady pace. It's not like remember Pete Rubish used to, like, rip weights off the ground, and then at some point, his maximal lifts don't look like 500, 500 pounds. Like, he could pull 500 off the floor like it was a feather, and then when it gets to, like, 657, it starts to get slower.
Yes.
Colton seems to lift at the same exact pace from warm-ups to maximal attempts, which is I think is a massive game changer. So does Half Thor. And
Yep.
also, an important distinction before I let you jump back in is that Half Thor lifts in a deadlift suit. So even if it's
Yeah.
conventional, he's getting poundage out of the suit, whereas Colton does not. So if you give them both the suit, you give them both straps and eliminate Colton's grip, deficit. Dude, I don't know, man. It's a very maybe conventional is that different. But I just see Colton's stance being so narrow in a sumo. It's like a hybrid almost in a way. It's very
Yes.
very narrow for what it is. So I think if he specializes for a year, I think he's got it. I think he's got 520 in him kilograms.
It's
I mean,
your point about him being coached, I think, has to be spot on though, because I found
yeah,
this video some time ago of Dan Green talking about deadlifters, how they change over the years, and he referenced specifically Pete Rubish. And he actually said exactly what you said, which is Pete in his early years would just annihilate the bar off the floor and then get stuck in this weird position.
yeah,
And Dan Green perspective, which I agree with, was that okay, so people make the mistake of looking at that type of lifter and they say, okay, he's fast off the floor and he slows down at top. We have to do a lot of top end work.
yeah,
Sure. Okay. But how about we get the technique to be more stable off the bottom? A lot of times, if you pull crazy hard and you get out of position at the bottom, you're more rounded over and it's way harder to get the bar back. Okay.
Correct.
So he was talking about how Pete Rubish, towards the end of his powerlifting career, when he was deadlifting, and again, like almost seems like child's play compared to Colton, but he had pulled, I think, like 940 conventional in training with straps, no
Really?
suit, but with the straps. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
he was legitimately pound for pound one of the greatest deadlifters of all time. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not even really a question. But you notice that he really changed his technique to be in better position at the top. Point is, Colton, he he kind of already does that. Like someone had to have taught him that, is my point.
Yeah.
To your point, like he
Yeah.
has to have had someone teach him, like, no, this is the position you get into, this is what you maintain, and that this is how you get better at this.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of guys who were that young that put up crazy numbers, like you said, and there's flaws in the technique that they don't fix until later when they realize, like what you were saying, oh, I need a lot of top end work. At that point, you might just be nickel and diming it for the rest of your life for a 5 pound PR because
Yeah.
you're so at the ceiling of what the poor technique can give you that you have to
Correct.
take a lateral step over to go to a much higher ceiling. Okay. It's like you're
Yes.
trying to carve through granite or something and you're just chipping away. Whereas there's like a air vent right next to it. You can just climb into the air vent and get to the top
Yeah.
of the mountain, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that simple. So like, you're right. He's obviously very measured. And I also don't think he's figured out how to, this is going to sound crazy, but might not have, like he went for like 1,000 pound squat in that meet. I think he missed it. Okay.
Okay.
And so I don't know if he even hit a PR on his squat as a
Mm.
result. Like he's going to have to really prioritize the squat or the deadlift when he's that strong in both. Like if he's trying to pull 1,100 in a full meet, you might have to just squat 9. You know,
Given. It's granted.
yeah,
Oh,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean. Like
Yeah.
that's just kind of what's going to happen at a certain point. You know.
I do think that the wisdom of long-term training, like for example, you mentioned the technique has been so clean. We both mentioned it for Colton as so young. When you look at an old video of half door lifting, he's always been strong. But when he was like, in his early 20s, lifting like 700-pound deadlift, it looked bad. It looked like a high school athlete who can like just freakishly pull 500 or 600, for no reason. But it just looks untrained, rounded, unstable, hips shoot up first, all these things that, better as a seasoned lifter, but where Halfdor has it now is he's has so many years in, he's got a lot of muscle maturity and a lot of tendon thickness and, bone density from so many years of carrying crazy body weight and doing strongman and all this, but he knows how to peak.
Yes, he does.
That
Best in the
man
world. Best in the
that
world
man
at it.
knows exactly how to be best on contest day.
Hmm.
And I think once Colton can master that craft, which is going to take years and feeling out, and he's also exploding with his potential right now. So it's really hard to learn how to peak when you're, Hafthor, his incremental jumps of strength are going to be so minimal now, just like edging out his last world record.
Hmm.
Whereas this is Colton's prime for like skyrocketing his capacity. So it's going to be very hard for him to kind of nail down for a few more years, I think, until he hits maybe 30 years old, if he doesn't get hurt, God forbid, that he can actually peak with accuracy, I think, unless I'm not sure how Hathor does it, but he's got it down to an exact science. And that's where he separates himself from the pack, besides being a 6'9", 400-pound animal.
It's a
No.
great point. He is the only guy that I've seen that could that peaks like him to where seemingly that you're going to get a world record broken was Milanichev.
Yep.
That was the only guy that comes to mind. I'm sure I don't follow lifting as much as I used to. I
Sure.
know there's a lot of raw squatting freaks now, like in the IPF guys that are squatting over 1,000 very consistently. They're dunking it, like really good technique. But I don't know how consistent their performances are. I just know that with Milanichev, it was just like he was gonna cool as ice, just squat a world record every time he showed up, like 1,000, 1,010, 1,020, 1,030, and it just looked easy. Like kind of like you said about Colton, you never really saw him like looking like he was going to burst the blood vessel. It was just
Yeah.
smooth down and
Yep.
up. And I just don't think our audience, it's like you said, when you see a sport, you watch a sprinter sprint, or for me, when I watch like a really, really phenomenal jiu-jitsu artist like do jiu-jitsu, like I have an appreciation for like how hard it is to do what they are doing. weightlifting is funny, Ian, because or weight training is funny because everyone kind of does it. You could go to the gym and like go do a squat and a bench and a deadlift. There's less people doing jujitsu than people who are exercising with weights, obviously.
Fair.
And so it's almost like because people also train, they almost, I think some people, because bodybuilding is like this too, they they think that because they train, that maybe that they could do something that special one day,
Well,
maybe,
lunacy.
which is
Yeah.
absolute lunacy. And I just, because you're so used to, you bench press yourself, you don't realize how hard it is to bench press 610 in a full meet with no issues whatsoever, technically, or anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really, all I'm saying is, if you watch Colton train and compete, whatever, it is like historic. Like it is really crazy. And I think the analogy here, I thought about this a lot. Curious to know what you think about this. Sidey's funny. Just isn't just training, but this directly applies to Colton and anyone who comes after him. In jiu-jitsu some time ago, there was like the leg lock revolution. For a long time, leg locks, at least heel hooks, were illegal, all right, in a lot of the higher level tournaments. As
Okay.
such, very few guys trained them. Okay. Those same guys that were winning IBJJF world championships were also going to ADCC and winning. Okay. John Danaher's crew of guys came in and they realized that no one knew how to defend leg locks. So he taught them a leg locking system. They went into ADCC and other rule sets that allowed leg locks and destroyed all of the top level guys that had been around forever
Wow.
out of nowhere. Okay.
Damn.
The whole time they were doing that, they were already in the gym working on the traditional jiu-jitsu because they knew eventually that the top level guys would at least learn how to defend and they had to have something else other than
Sure.
leg locks to win. Okay.
Up their sleeve. Yeah.
They exploited a big loophole. But the point is, every time you see progress, be it in leg locks, powerlifting, one that I always think about is aviation. Okay. You see a revolution, crazy, insane jumps forward. But then once that jump stops, it's just incremental change for the rest of existence. So, like
That's
the
fair.
Wright brothers first flew, in the early 1900s. Okay.
Not too long
I want,
ago. In
I
all
want,
all due respect, not too long ago.
exactly. I want you to think
Yeah.
about this. Imagine if you showed the Wright brothers a B-52. They would be like, that's a spaceship. That doesn't even make
Doesn't make
any
any
sense.
sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
to go from flying in the early 1900s to around 1952, when the B-52 was made, aviation, we went from not flying, okay, to something that is completely unrecognizable. Okay, it looks like a complete spaceship. How do we even do this? Right now, 75 years later, the B-52 is still in service,
Yeah.
right? And
Still one of
and
the best
and
in the business.
and
Yeah.
the US military has basically said it's going to be in service for basically 100 years. We're going to have
Yeah.
flown this plane for 100 years. So what does that show you? We had our revolution in progress, and then we eked out incremental change forever to the point of where some of the stuff we figured out, we still use. Now, granted, a lot of that has to do with strategy. Some things might just become strategically obsolete. Like you don't like battleships, as an example. Like no one needed once the aircraft carrier was in business, boats with giant cannons on it didn't fucking matter as much anymore.
Yeah.
It was what it was. Okay,
Yeah.
you could say now with the hypersonic missiles and drones, aircraft carriers are becoming obsolete, right? If you
Yeah.
if you if you can't, like right now, the U.S. Navy is so far away from the Persian Gulf that the aircraft carriers have planes taking off that are then refueling on the way to the target and refueling on the back of the target, which is actually probably more expensive than other options. Where in the
They're
past, the
too
scary
vulnerable
thing,
now.
yeah, the scary thing about
Yeah.
the aircraft carrier was they would just park it next to your country and they would have people airborne in 10 minutes blowing up your army. Now you
Yeah.
see them coming for an hour before they even get there. So right now the revolution is in drone technology and missiles. Okay.
Yes.
And the US is trying to catch up to everybody else because right now the Iranians and frankly the Russians are ahead of us in drone technology, at least in terms of what the type that's being used in the Middle East.
Sure.
Eventually, at some point, that's gonna stop. It's just gonna be incremental progress, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what giant revolution. But I always use the example, the B-52. Like it will have been in service for 100 years, which is a crazy thing to think about, especially for an airplane. Like, dude, we
Yes.
don't even use guns really. Well, maybe some maybe some hunting rifles and everything, but not that many guns from 100 years ago are still used. Okay,
No.
handguns maybe
No.
like 1911. Yeah, some handguns, but I mean,
Classics.
yeah, but like the B-52 again, going back 50 years from the creation of the B-52, people would have thought if that thing flew over they might not have even thought that it was human.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
flew over
It was that
your
far
town,
advanced.
it would have been you would have been like, what the fuck is this thing? Okay. You know, in 100 years later, okay, everyone knows what it is. It's just normal. Okay. It just that's the way to bring this back to Colton. He may be the guy that is the epitome of the revolution forward in raw powerlifting.
Mm.
We had our generation that got into it, which increased the talent pool. More people got into it. Okay. Then you had the access to information in the past. The information I think has always been the same, by the way. Okay. It's just that less people had access to it. Certain coaches knew stuff, but you had to go to their
Yes.
gyms. Okay. Weight training has not fundamentally changed that much in terms of core principles that make it work, but you have to go to West Side Barbell or Big Iron or wherever to learn these things. Now you have a larger talent pool of people that can look up any training program in the world pretty much right away. Okay. And
Yep. From
as we've
anywhere.
discussed, you can order any drugs you want now. That's also totally changed. Okay.
Crazy.
Nutritional knowledge has changed, but there's a huge talent pool in conjunction with all of this stuff, improvements in equipment, of course. It's going to lead a revolutionary jump forward. But as we discussed like last week or 2 weeks ago, like humans have not evolved that much.
Well,
Okay.
so that's what
It's,
I was just thinking that. I was
I
just
don't,
thinking that.
we're still
But
the
at
same
some
humans.
point, there's going to be like a jump in the needle with evolution. Like I think people like Colton, we're going to start to see more of that, and that it's not because his technique is so much better than everybody else's. It is, but it's also he's just built for this. His
Yes.
leverage, his insertions, all the things that he has. You know, maybe again as the talent pool widens or deepens, however you want to say it, you'll see more freaks come out. You'll see more people who are built for this to kind of compete in the same sport. But he's a generational shift because he's so much better leveraged for these lifts than anybody we've seen in a while. Like
The
that, to an
thing
Ed
with,
Cohn maybe. Ed Cohn would be that same
yes,
needle jump.
they're
Ed
right there.
Cohn,
They're right
Colton,
there. Yeah.
yeah, being
Yeah.
smallish when they
Yeah.
start, small-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ed Cohn much smaller when he started, but yeah, I don't know. I think the interest is ramping up with the age of the internet and lifts being more popular and gym culture becoming more popular. Like 70 years ago, nobody lifted. That's
Yeah.
why
They thought you were
the
gay.
BMI is height to weight ratio with zero consideration of muscle mass.
Yeah.
That's like because everybody was 5'9" and 160 pounds. That was
Yeah.
like kind of how it went. Now they have these freaks who are
So
much
2
different.
points. I want to make a point about that, and then I know you got to go. First of
Yep.
all, back then you also had a military draft in the United States,
Yep.
so fitness standards were going to be much more closely related to what you need to do to survive military service
Sure.
than to actually be jacked and huge. I remember reading recently that like if you weigh over 220, and it might be height to weight, but I remember thinking, wow, I wouldn't qualify to even start this. Like if you're over 220, they don't even let you start basic underwater demolition SEAL training. You're too big, too
Wow.
heavy. And again,
Really?
maybe if you're 6'5", maybe okay. But then
Could be a
again,
BMI thing.
I also
Yeah.
don't know if sometimes you're so tall and you can't fit in a helicopter. That also becomes a restriction. Like there are
True.
issues with that, right? But like there certainly the ideal male back then would have been someone who could work on a farm, work in a warehouse or build a skyscraper or something, or someone who could serve in the military. So being too big was detrimental to all of those things, right? Like endurance is super important. I have gotten to know some of the great men who served in special forces over the years. And another thing we're talking about not being able to appreciate it. You don't really understand, guys, how much shit those guys have to carry. Okay.
Oh my god.
Like your body
For how
armor
long?
alone is sometimes 25 pounds. Then you're
Yeah.
carrying potentially a radio. You're carrying your weapon. You're carrying spare ammunition. You're carrying maybe explosives. You're in you're wearing knee pads and boots. You're in the fucking desert. Okay.
You're a pack
Like,
mule.
yeah, it's so if you're 250 and we strap an extra 75 pounds of gear on you, you're deep shit. I mean,
Yeah.
that is no good. Like, that's a serious problem. So, like, the military does not incentivize, or at least didn't incentivize being too jacked, because if you're too if your endurance is everything, if you're exhausted, you may just die, okay? And
Yes.
if you're too slow running from foxhole to foxhole or getting covered, you're also dead, okay? So obviously no one would have ever thought that we would become these like hyper insane jacked up genetic freaks, because that just wasn't what they thought the ideal man would be like. But I'll leave you
Yeah.
with this: people think that evolution just occurs, and that's not true, okay? When there has to be Darwinian pressure in order for these things to occur. So if you look at evolution and like, an animal on an island or something, it may be that in order to avoid a predator that had recently made its way to the island, uh, certain birds that were a certain color were survived because the predator couldn't see them. Maybe the birds had to cover themselves in mud, and the birds that could cover themselves in mud to block out the heat from the predator that it could see, you know what I mean, were the ones that could survive. You missed my joke. So the ones that were smart enough to figure out to cover themselves in mud, okay? But the
Yeah.
point is,
Yeah.
the presence of this thing causes what we would call Darwinian pressure, okay? And that's the
Okay.
need to adapt, all right? We don't have that in this country. Any society that's hyper liberal or even Marxist, where egalitarianism is the religion of the day, Darwinian pressure will not occur, because that's considered evil. It's considered evil in the West to be like, let's get good looking, strong men and women together to produce good looking, strong, intelligent babies. Okay.
Okay.
Inherently, we are all looking for that, but it is not taking place on a mass societal level where that is incentivized. There have been places throughout history where that has taken place, and it has worked pretty well for the people. The word that we would use is called eugenics. Darwinian pressure amongst humans in a society is basically eugenics. It's government policy saying, okay, I'm not saying I agree with all this, by the way, but it could be as simple as criminals are not allowed to reproduce. But people have done this before. If you're a criminal, you're not allowed to reproduce. Sex offenders get castrated. Why? Partially because we don't want them to reproduce. Let's just be totally honest.
Yeah.
We want to remove that from the gene pool. And Darwinian pressure can occur, or evolution can occur, in two ways. One could be we incentivize the strongest, best looking, most intelligent people to breed, which I think is great. The other one is you remove the people you don't want breeding via
Kind
either,
of happens naturally a lot of times. It's that,
but here's the thing,
in certain ways.
yes and no. But if you look at, like, for example, immigration policies, like, look, there are fundamental differences between ethnicities all over the world. There are differences in IQ. If you fly in groups of people who are lower IQ and have them breed with your high IQ population, those children will be less intelligent.
Yeah. On
Okay,
average. On
for
average.
sure,
Yeah.
it pretty much
Yeah.
always works out that way. Okay,
Yeah.
and so, like, that's, it's just, there have to be things in place to maintain the Darwinian pressure to move forward. I'll give you one example of this that I think is really interesting, but the adaptation has already taken place. Most great civilizations that we know of today that were technologically advanced tend to occur at about the same, like, latitude on Earth. Okay, and a big part of that reason is they're temperate in the sense of their seasons. Their seasons.
Okay.
It is theorized, and I kind of agree with this, that the presence of seasons prioritizes the correct time preferences. Okay. IQ is basically pattern recognition over time. If we recognize this pattern every year, there's going to be a spring, summer, winter, fall, or whatever. And we understand that every winter there's going to be way less food. And every summer and spring, there's going to be way more food. The people who are unable to defer gratification will die. Okay. If you don't know how to store your food, okay, if you just live it up and party in the summer and you didn't prepare for the winter, you're going to die. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Whereas the people who knew how to build a warmer house, understood, and think about a lot of Western holidays, they're around, like, so for example, like Easter, even though I'm a Christian, but it's not a coincidence that it's placed at the time when spring starts. It's the breaking of the winter. We have all this new
Mm.
food. Let's eat all the old food we have in storage and begin anew. Like, it's literally meant to symbolize we don't have to delay gratification anymore because the hard times for the year are potentially over.
Okay.
Okay. So if you gorge yourself in the summer and you don't prepare anything and you just lay on a beach, and then all of a sudden it's, -5 degrees outside and you have no food, you're just going to die. And so the theory is that all these higher IQ populations, which again you see tend to be Europeans, okay, and East Asians. Those are your highest IQ populations generally in the world. They all grew up and they all evolved in places where the seasons change and you have to be able to prepare for it.
Sure.
Okay. Whereas if you live in a really warm area all year long, you have access to food more consistently. You don't have to store something because I could go outside and pick a fruit off a tree. It's always there. Okay.
Mm.
There's always an animal to hunt. Okay. The animals aren't hiding. And if you kill an animal in hibernation, it's also skinnier and less nutrient dense, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to say, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that correlation, it's kind of undefeated in a way. Like I wish it wasn't true because like it's very alienating to think these things, but I don't see a world where it's not true. And when you look at the output, all of the most advanced civilizations come from these type of climates. Now, I'll leave you with this, then you can say whatever you want.
Sure. Sure.
I'm not applying a moral value to this, okay? As a Christian, if you go to face you die and you're at the gates of heaven and St. Peter asks you, "What did you do with your life, Eric?" And you're like, "Well, I was really smart and I invented a laser beam." It doesn't get you into heaven. Virtue gets you into heaven, right? So I'm not saying that being more intelligent makes you a better person. I'm not just same way that I don't think being tall makes you a better person. Okay. But these are the outcomes. They happen for a
Understood.
reason. Yeah. That's all.
Are you saying that since I moved to Florida into a warmer climate, that my grandchildren are going to be dumber because I moved
No.
to a
Well,
an
because
even keel?
it
No,
would
I'm
take
just kidding.
no, but so that's a great point, which is
Well, I have a
it would
counterpoint though. I have a
it would
counterpoint for you.
take many generations to undo what your people went through over the course of many generations in Europe.
Yeah. So
You know what I mean?
fair enough. So you're
Yeah.
saying, okay, I hear that completely.
Yeah.
On another point of view, with respect to lifting and how this is a mostly physical activity podcast, so we do a lot of lifting and grappling and other types of physical activities. This is not like a mathletes club, but 1776, the homes were smaller, the beds were smaller, the people were smaller. It's not a long time ago. 250 years, not that long. The linemen in the NFL in the 70s were the size of the average like quarterback now or running
Mhm.
back in the
I know where you're
current
going with
NFL
this.
standard. So like
Yes.
people are growing like physically, maybe not IQ so much. People are growing physically at a pretty aggressive rate. And that could be breeding with other big people. Like
Okay.
Brock
I have
Lesnar's daughter
yeah,
is like
she's
a master shot putter, and
incredible.
she was dating some other freak football athlete. And one of like the I forget who it was. One of the owners of the an NFL team was like, if they procreate, I'll give you like a signing bonus on the day
Yeah.
of the birth, like
Exactly. Exactly.
like scouting people based on genetics. But people are getting bigger and stronger over the course of time. Maybe not
Okay.
smarter.
That's a
And to
great point.
before you go over one quick point, one last point is a friend of mine sent me a little thing on the internet about a sculptor from Italy, and he was 23 years old, I think, and he was like the 1400s,
Okay.
and he was so brilliant, he was able to sculpt these two people who were holding each other and make the stone look soft, like he was actually,
Crazy.
you
It's
know,
beautiful.
it's incredible. Fast forward to today, and bridges are collapsing left and right in Italy. Whether it's corruption or whether it's poor craftsmanship, like why can't the Vatican construction brilliance? Why wouldn't that exponentially get better over time with
Okay.
people,
You
the
either
Europeans, kind of sticking in the same?
you're either first of all, back then there was way more Darwinian pressure. We cared
Fair,
more about art and those things, they mattered.
sure,
Nowadays we care more about diversity and being nice. People were
yeah,
ruthless about those things back then, dude.
that's true.
If you were in a society where everything wasn't just given to you, if you didn't contribute, you were out, bro. There was, you know what I mean? Could you imagine? But serious,
Yeah,
imagine
there are a
me and
lot of
you.
non-contributing people in
We
these
get on the
today's society
fucking
for sure.
Mayflower and we sail across the ocean and we set up Jamestown. And you and I are out there every day, busting our ass, digging ditches, so farm. Instead of building up a farm, we're alternating watch points. Like the Native Americans might come and literally kill us all. All right, you sit in the tower tonight, and
That's
we have
fair.
one guy who does nothing, and we have to share food with him. Bye. Okay,
Yeah,
like, but nowadays we would just say, well, just just give him a little more, and maybe he'll work harder. That's how we think now. But to your
yeah,
point. One of the first things, and I'm so glad you said this, dude, that you notice when societies become more prosperous, one of the first things that people groups do is they start to eat more meat. Poor
Hmm.
societies, historically, you have two different types of societies: meat societies, rice and bean societies. Rice plus beans equals complete protein. Meat by itself, complete protein. Okay. It is not a coincidence that the meat societies produced bigger people historically. Okay.
Hmm.
It's super, super common. Okay. Now, with that said, I think if you have a genetic code within you, so we'll use IQ as an example, but this is also true of height. The limit for how tall you can get is set genetically. But guess what? You could eat poorly, okay, be starved, be abused as a child, and that will limit how much of your potential you're able to get to,
Hmm.
right? And there are points in your life when that growth signal has to hit. If it doesn't hit, it probably doesn't happen. Okay. Once your epiphyseal plate's closed, it's over. It doesn't matter. If you could have been 6'6", but you're only 6 foot flat because you lived through a famine and you were starved for 7 years, you're not going to get that height at age 30 when you suddenly get
That's true.
access to food. Okay.
That's true.
So I think what you do see is people just have more access to high quality food, in particular protein sources. Okay. Dude, it wasn't easy to have that much protein back in the day. I mean, there was no refrigerators. Like, again, remember, like,
True.
if you killed an animal,
Salt their
okay,
food for
yeah,
long-term
yeah,
preservation.
you had to salt it, and you couldn't just say like, well, and this is actually what I want to talk to you about today, but we're going to wait for next week. Like, Daddy's got to get his 1 gram per pound of body weight, so let me go in there. No, that's not how it works. You
Yeah.
divvy up whatever it is to survive. So
Yeah.
nowadays, you don't. There's really no nutritional limitations for athletes or for really anybody if you work hard enough and you know where to look. And so what we have now is people I think are achieving a greater percentage of their genetic potential because all of those limitations that come from scarcity are no longer there. That's exactly
That's
how
true.
I would describe
That's
it.
true.
Now,
Okay.
to be sure, yes, there absolutely are examples of famous athletes shacking up with other famous athletes. And why wouldn't you? You have a ton in common. You understand the pressure of competition. You have the same values, and they produce incredible kids. My point is that there has not been a society wide push for that. That's all I'm trying
Well,
to
all
say.
right. Fair
Okay.
enough. Yeah,
And, and,
that's
and,
that's a
and I think if we were going to truly
fantastic point.
leverage, if we were going to truly leverage evolution, literally evolution, as the reason why athletes are getting better, I personally, we need to see evidence of actual Darwinian pressure, either from our environment forcing us to get bigger and stronger, or eugenic pressure coming from the state, literally, that says, hey, if you're 6'1", you better marry a woman who's 5'10" or taller, or you're not getting that. Like, you know what I
Fair
mean?
enough.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
I want
But
that, okay,
for the
but like,
yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
All right. So for the last 75 years in this country, living conditions are stable, right? We're not hunting
Mhm.
and gathering. We're not,
Yes.
it's not primitive times. Are you taller than your father?
Just this right there. Um,
Okay.
so
All right. So
my dad's oldest brother is the shortest. I guess it's tough to say because my dad is like 75. So I don't know like when he shrunk
what?
or versus when I was taller,
Sure,
like at
sure.
his peak. But my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, is by far the tallest person in the family. By
Okay.
far. Yeah,
So
by far.
I'm saying like so I'm taller than my father by a little. My brother's taller by a lot. Most people that I know when I really think about it, especially the male to male or female to female, they become taller than their parents.
Mhm,
Most times. That I'd say only a couple people I can count on my fingers that are shorter than their fathers
mhm.
on average, unless they have a very, very short mother and that
That's what I was gonna
genetics
say.
took over.
Yes, exactly.
So what's the Darwinian pressure for us getting taller on average over the generations? It's just kind of it seems like that's the trend over the course of time. People are just bigger now than they were 100 years ago, and even bigger than 100 years before that. That's not again
I'm gonna
to
say
my
two
earlier point. It's
things.
not that long.
So there's two things going on here. I hesitate to say the second thing,
My
but once
hormones and food.
but once you see it, you can't unsee it. First thing is women are hardwired to want taller men.
Okay,
Period. Okay. Uh it means it signifies strength, vitality. Even if it's a skinny dude, it just on some level it
yeah,
signifies strength, vitality. And interestingly enough, I have some tall friends, really tall friends, love them to death, but, like, once you get over 6'3", 6'4", it becomes a turnoff. Because now that's it that it's almost like awkwardness, potential genetic problems, like, it's a weird thing, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
But one thing you see also is the beautiful woman with somewhat ugly kids. And it's almost always the situation where the beautiful woman married a rich, ugly guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And they have children that are like nowhere near as beautiful as the mom or the mom's family. You're just like, what a sin. What a
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah.
You've got this incredible gift, and you're just it would be like if I married a dwarf. It's like, what are you doing, dude? I mean, like
Well,
your kids
yeah.
are gonna be 3'2". I mean, what this is crazy.
3'2". But I've seen two amazing looking people have not so great looking kids. I've seen
It's
two
true.
really kind of fugly people have like model children. So there are, I guess, the outliers, maybe not on
Think
average,
about
but
our
yeah.
buddy Dom. Our buddy Dom has got
Yeah.
4 or 5 brothers. They're all well, actually, no, his youngest brother, I haven't seen him in a while. I heard he's pretty tall, but when I knew that family, I think they were all under 6 feet tall, except Dom.
Really?
So, and
You wouldn't expect that with
Dom's
Dom,
parents are
seeing Dom.
tiny little Italian people, like off the boat, like the type of guy that looks like he would be at like a shoemaking store. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
giving you
yeah,
your
yeah,
beautiful leather shoes, and then Dom is like this behemoth. You know,
yeah,
but I listen. There are definitely situations where genetics can be pushed forward. I do think knowing more about nutrition is a huge thing. Okay. I also
sure.
don't know, again, the role of hormones in food or what's in water supplies. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not a total conspiracy nut about these things, but there are things in our environment that
That's
absolutely
fair.
like change our growth or what does grow and
For
whatnot.
better, for worse.
I don't know, but I do when I
Okay.
look at society, when I say that when we reward being ugly and stupid and incapable, in my opinion, what that does is it puts these types of people on a pedestal and gives them a higher likelihood to reproduce because of their status. Okay.
Yeah,
And that to
yeah.
me is dysgenic, not eugenic. Okay. And it's
Fair
weird because
enough.
what you're seeing these two forces working against each other. One is society's telling you to be dysgenic. It's cool to be dysgenic. You know what I mean? Marry a freak or whatever. We want to help the freaks. But internally, deep within your soul and your brain, nobody wants to marry that person. And I think sometimes what happens, like I've seen a lot of women marry guys who are really soft and pathetic and hate them. And my theory was always like society taught them to hate masculine men. They followed society. They married a guy that's not masculine, but that unconscious part of their brain hates that man for not being masculine. Hates
Yeah.
them. Okay. And so they did what society told them to do as opposed to following their instincts. And now they're miserable because they married a guy they're not attracted to, even though they were told to marry a guy that they can walk all over, who will bend the knee to them all the time. That's not
Like a
what
simp.
really what most women want. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Most women don't want
yeah.
that. It sounds nice in theory to like have someone who does things for you all the time, but at a certain point you won't respect them. It's just
Yeah, fair
it
enough.
is
But
what
I
it
guess
is what it is.
being kind and chivalrous as a man is also that's masculine. That's still masculine. So you don't
Simping
have to
is
be
not masculinity,
a
dog. You know what
complete,
I'm talking about.
waif where you're yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, more to dive into next week, buddy. This was great.
I
I
want you to
like
prepare
we
next week.
traversed many topics today.
Next week, we're going to do a deep dive. Who knows what we'll agree or disagree on? I want to talk to you about protein consumption.
Okay.
Okay. This is a topic I've been reading a little bit more about lately. I've been challenging my preconceived notions on protein intake. I'm curious to know where you stand with this.
Okay. I'll
All
prepare.
right. Next week, protein. Eat your protein so you can become taller than your ancestors. Find a good looking, intelligent person, marry them, have 5 kids, save your people. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great one.